This is Clint Grease of San Francisco Exposed, your chronicle of corruption, incompetence, and malfeasance of all kinds in City Hall. I went down to the District 7 Supervisor Candidates Forum last week, a forum sponsored by a group called Sensible D7. One of many neighborhood groups have popped up around the city looking at making improvements in quality of life issues in their neighborhoods. And the questions of crime and corruption in City Hall were front and center. Speaking of City Hall, there are a few candidates who want to be your Board of Supervisors representative from District 7. I went down to the most recent forum to hear the debate. I was surprised to find that one of the candidates, the incumbent, didn't show. Myrna Melgar, who was elected 4 years ago in ranked choice voting, came in third place when it came to top choice votes. But after ranked choice voting, she took the #1 position and is now serving as District 7 Supervisor. She didn't attend, and her campaign sent a message saying that she didn't want to participate until the candidates were already settled, until the field of candidates was complete. And though it's true that you could still jump into the District 7 race at this point, there are 4 registered candidates, one of which is missing in action, and the other 2 showed up to discuss their positions on many important matters related to San Franciscans and District 7 voters in particular. I was very pleased at the showing of both candidates, Stephen Martin Pinto and Matthew Boschetto. In fact, their candidacies are very similar in a lot of ways. Their positions on the issues are very similar. They are both very pragmatic men who have very clear ideas about the corruption and the malfeasance in San Francisco City Hall. And listening to them is very refreshing. And with that, I hope you enjoy the forum.
Welcome to the first District 7 Supervisor Candidate Forum for the 2024 election. My name is Jamie Wong, and I will be moderating this evening's discussion. This forum is intended to be an introduction to the candidates running for District 7 Board of Supervisors seat. This is an important job, and many of the decisions made in this position have an impact on the quality of life in our district. This is not a debate or a gotcha question forum. For the most part, the candidates have been given all the questions in advance so they can accurately convey their positions to you. These questions were created from the ones you submitted when you registered to attend. We will only be asking questions that have been submitted in writing. If you have a question during this forum, we have volunteers with cards so you could submit a written question and we'll answer as many as we have time for. We hope to touch on a broad spectrum of your questions, but our time is limited. The goal tonight is to start the conversation. In terms of format, each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer each question. Sarah is keeping time and she will stop you at 3 minutes. With time permitting before closing, we will try and share some of the new questions from the audience before a quick lightning round. And before we begin, if you agree with the candidates, a polite clap is nice but not necessary. If you disagree or have a strong reaction, please feel free to roll your eyes, sigh, or even groan, but please don't disrupt the event. Your voice is best heard at the ballot box, and of course, you're welcome to talk to the candidates after the forum. Okay, we are happy to have 2 of the 3 candidates running for District 7 seat with us this evening. Unfortunately, Supervisor Melgar was invited to tonight's forum, but has chosen not to participate. The reason her campaign has given us is she is waiting for the field of candidates to be finalized. Because we value your time and participation, we have researched Supervisor Melgar's position via her public statements and voting record and have incorporated them into some of the questions we will be asking. This is so you can better understand how the challengers may agree or disagree with the incumbent. So with that said, I'm pleased to introduce you to the challengers, Matt Boschetto and Stephen Martin Pinto. I'd like to have each of you take 3 minutes to introduce yourselves. Please define your candidacy, why you're running, and how you distinguish yourself from the incumbent and other candidates. Let's start with you, Matt.
Great. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you to Sensible D7 for having this event. It's a great opportunity for me and the other candidates to engage with you guys so you guys can see who we are and hear what we're about. Thank you to all you for coming. This is a very special time in San Francisco, so the fact, we all need to be very engaged, and the fact that you are here tonight shows that you've taken that first step, so you all deserve a pat on your back as well. Real quick about me, I was born in San Francisco. My wife emigrated from the UK. We have 3 young children together. We have a small business, an e-commerce business that we started in the garage of our home, and now we have a warehouse down in Bayview. We've been operating for 8 years. My family has lived in Mira Loma for almost 100 years. My kids are the 5th generation to live in the city, or live in this neighborhood too, Mira Loma Park. My family emigrated to North Beach from Italy a long time ago, and when they moved to the west side, it was a very big deal for them. It was a sign that they had, achieved the American dream, like a lot of families who emigrate to San Francisco, start downtown, and then move to the west side. So for them, they felt like they, helped build this city, and they always instilled a pride in what it took to do that. And so for me, this is not just, just any old place. This is my hometown. This is the city. And for me, it's everything. I walk the same streets my dad walked with his mom, with my kids now. And my grandma walked it with her mom. So, for me, it's just not, it has a lot more deeper meaning. It has a very deep meaning, and I've had it since I was a kid. So, with my home, for me, this isn't just an opportunity. This isn't something I planned. With my home, my kids, my business, my family history, I just feel like I have too much invested into this city to stay on the sidelines during this time. This is not about a career trajectory. This is about me standing up for what I love and what I think is right. So I'm not a politician, I'm a businessman. For me, there's no blowing out the budget. There's no kicking the can down the road. Accountability is not just a buzzword. I have to live these things every day. So results for me are everything. And I hope to bring that sense, that hard work, that grit, that constant looking at the numbers and management attitude towards at the seat of supervisor. And I want to be the upfront leader that I think D7 hasn't had for a long time. I want to be a voice for the West Side, and I want to stand up for District 7. Thank you.
Stephen?
All right, thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Stephen Martin Pinto, and like Matt, I'm a native-born San Franciscan. My family's been here since about 1850 on my mom's side, and I'm the grandson of immigrants from Ecuador on my dad's side. I have a long history here. I grew up here, was born and raised here, and I went to St. Philip's to Lowell High School, and I rode the buses. They say every kid that grows up in San Francisco is a BMW. Bark, meaning walk. So I know the city like the back of my hand. I know just about every street, every neighborhood in San Francisco, and I still do. As a firefighter, it's critical that I do that, I know that. But after I went to Lowell High School, I graduated, I went off to join the Marine Corps, where I served for about 10 years on active duty. I went to Iraq and Afghanistan, and finally Georgia, the country. And when I came back in 2014, I got hired by the fire department. My first thought was, after not being here for so long, was what the hell happened to my beautiful city? And I moved back to Sunnyside into my family's home, and I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what to do. So I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, where to go. I didn't know. I just had no idea. So I began to get involved in my neighborhood association, Sunnyside, and from there, that's basically the beginning of my political career. I served as president for 4 years, which led me to West Twin Peaks Central Council, where I served for 4 years. Also, I was a Veteran Affairs Commissioner for about 5 years, and I began to get involved in SF politics, helping out wherever I could, contributing wherever I could to make our city the place that I knew it could be. In 2020, I ran for Supervisor, District 7, and I really had no idea what to do. I ran the campaign, I started by myself, and with just being my social media account, but it began to attract a lot of attention because I made one commitment to myself, and that's to always tell it like it is and not hold back. And people responded very positively to that. And that's what I bring to the table. Straight talk, integrity, real solutions, pragmatic solutions. You know, I'm not a politician. I don't think like a politician. I don't act like a politician. I don't speak like a politician because I'm a public servant. I'm not a politician, I'm a public servant. And that's how I approach each and every problem that I will face as supervisor. What's a pragmatic solution? What's a common sense solution? How can we get it done? You know, I don't have time for politics. I don't have time for virtue signaling. I have time for what works, and I don't have time for what doesn't work. So that's what I bring to the table, and I hope to get your support tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. So let's go to the pre-submitted questions. So due in part to the flight of our business tax base, the city's budget deficit for the next 2 years is projected to be almost $800 million. How should this be addressed? Specifically, what would you cut and what services do you deem too important to cut? Matt?
Me? All right, great. You know, I'd like to start with what I wouldn't cut. First and foremost, I think public safety is one of the most fundamental basic services. And I think it's a great example how misprioritization of funds ends up in us not prioritizing funding a basic service and the quality in that service declining. So I think, you know, public safety also has a huge element around the revenue side as well. People don't want to come to the city right now due to the state of it. So I think if we can help with the public safety issues, it'll also help with the $800 million deficit. When I look at the $800 million deficit, the first place I want to go is to the $1.6 million in grants that we dole out as a city. I think the process in which we dole it out, and it really, you know, isn't results-based and results in a lot of inefficient and sometimes dishonest uses of these grants. So we really need to make sure and implement performance audits for this grant to make sure that, you know, organizations and individuals are doing what they say they're going to do with the money. And that's true for contractors and departments as well. We should also be putting performance audits across them. And, you know, I think when we talk about departments, one thing I think we should look at just for a very useful tool is doing zero-based budgeting. So we can look at the departments one by one, how lean we could be versus how we're running, and see, you know, really put a spotlight on the inefficiencies. Now, when I say that, you know, I'm also very cognizant that the fact that the city is the city's biggest employer. So, you know, when we talk about the budget, we're talking about a lot of people's livelihoods, and, you know, we're gonna go through rough waters, we're gonna have to find some financial help, but while doing so, I think we need to just try to remain intact when we come through, because again, we're talking about people's jobs.
Thank you. Susan?
I have a very similar take on this position. I think we need to look at all our city services that we provide, prioritize the most essential ones in order from most essential to least essential, and fund accordingly. So obviously, everyone's talking about public safety as the most critical service that we cannot do without. And for a good reason too, because public safety has far and wide-reaching effects onto business, onto people's sense of security, onto whether or not they choose to live here or not, and all this ultimately has effects on tax revenue. For example, a couple of years ago, a friend and I went down to Union Square and brought coffee to some of the cops that were working down there. This is after some of the riots had happened. And I got a little curious and asked, why Union Square? What is the big deal about protecting this so much? Why the large police presence? And the answer I got was quite surprising. One of the police officers said to me that Union Square and vicinity is responsible for 70% of all sales tax revenue in the city. That's why it's important. And if we lose Union Square, we lose a lot of our sales tax revenue, which means money for basically everything that the city can fund. Roads, schools, you name it. So that's why it's so critical that we protect that, our quality of life with public safety first, funding that first. And like Matt says, I do believe that there is a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse in our government. We have 130 commissions, we have 30 to 40 departments, a lot of which have redundant or outdated positions. So let's consolidate, let's reduce the government, spending so we can save more of our money and provide for those essential services that we should all expect a city to pay for. We've got a $14.6 billion budget, and that, think of that number for a second. That's more than some states and many cities of comparable size. What quality of service have you been getting for that $14.6 billion budget? It's doubled over the last 10 to 15 years. Has the quality of service gotten better or gotten worse? So we need to really look at where we're spending our money, cutting programs that don't produce results, focusing our efforts on programs that do offer results, and prioritizing services from greatest to least and funding accordingly.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to the next question. The city faces a multitude of scandals involving its departments and contracted nonprofit organizations with minimal to no oversight. Supervisor Melgar was president of DBI when the corruption occurred. What would you do to clean up City Hall and the nonprofits?
As I kind of mentioned just before, greater standards for grants, I think, and performance audits for all who receive them, I think, is the top thing we can do. As it stands, there's just far too much ability to get a grant and then too little accountability on the side of the grantees. And it's resulted in, I think, not just incompetency and inefficiency, but a great amount of dishonesty. So, for nonprofits, we need to run off key performance indicator performance audits. If they're not fulfilling their mandate and moving the needle on the issue they're addressing, we should get rid of them and find new partners. And those go for especially really large ones like Health Right 360, Home Rise, who take tens of millions of dollars from San Francisco's coffers and have a very important mandate to solve homelessness. So, if they're not around, if they're not working, we need to definitely find better partners and hopefully save some money while doing so. For contractors, I think it's absolutely the same. If a budget comes in way too low and it's plagued by change orders, especially if they should have foresaw those, that contractor should never be able to bid. They should be off the contractor's list. So I think having a performance metric for contractors would be great. And really the point is we need to move off of ideological requirement, an ideological process, and move to more of a results-based process, one that just will end in better management, healthier financial accountability, healthy financial efficiency, and just a more balanced city overall.
Stephen?
Well, as far as corruption goes, I have several ideas which I think we should consider. One of the biggest things I think we should do is end no-bid contracting. We have a lot of contracts that are just, they go to preferred City Hall contractors, City Hall insiders without any bid process, and it just allows for a lot of potential corruption. So I want to end that practice immediately. The other thing I want to do is, like Matt alluded to earlier, zero-based budgeting. What that is means every nonprofit starts with a budget of $0, and they must justify line by line every expense, every dollar requested from the city. It allows for a more transparent process. It makes the nonprofits work to justify every dollar that they receive, and it fosters an environment where corruption is harder to proliferate. Background checks, credit checks for every commissioner. Okay, we have a lot of commissioners who have questionable backgrounds, who have maybe conflicting interests. For example, Cindy Elias, her husband runs a law firm where it specializes in police brutality cases, yet she sits on the police commission. So I see a definite conflict of interest right there that's been kind of brushed under the rug. We need to really find out who's on commissions. And one more thing too that you might not have heard before is going back to the budgeting process for nonprofits. Line item veto. Give the mayor line item veto power for individual budget expense proposals. So, for example, if some nonprofit is requesting $50,000 for outreach, something vague like that, the mayor has the power to say, nope, I don't accept that, you're not getting that until you come back and tell me more exactly what it is that you're spending that money on. And this allows for a reduction in potential corruption. And just generally reduce the size of the government. We have one of the highest per capita ratios of government workers to citizens in any city in the United States. And again, the more government employees you have, the more opportunity for bribes, the more opportunity for corruption. So just by reducing the size of government alone, I think you can actually decrease the chances for corruption that are happening here in San Francisco. So that's my answer.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next question. San Francisco has over 130 unelected, unaccountable commissions. For comparison, LA has fewer than 50. In addition to being a costly bureaucracy, many of these have more power to direct the activity of frontline city workers than even the heads of the departments, the mayor, the board, or the board of supervisors. The police commission is an example. Another is that there are 5 separate commissions with power over homeless policies. Signatures are now being gathered for a November ballot proposition that would limit the number and power of unelected commissions. What is your position on reforming city commissions?
Well, I think to reform city commissions, I totally agree with reducing the number of city commissions. You know, I'm saying this, and I was a commissioner myself for 5 years, so that should tell you something. We have way too many, and I don't even know what half of them do, to be honest. And I consider myself to be a pretty astute person in city politics. I think the best way to approach it is by voter mandate, to be honest. I don't think there's enough will in City Hall, inside City Hall, to reduce the number of commissions on their own. Because everybody knows somebody and everyone's gonna try and call in a favor, and before you know it, nothing's getting done. So it has to be by voter mandate. So I support that proposition. I think together with Seth is putting that together. The other thing I would say is, for the police commission, they have a lot of power over the tactics of the police, which I think is quite unusual. And I'll give you an example between the fire commission and the police commission. Okay, I'm an engine driver in the inner Richmond. There's a certain rule book, set of tactics that I follow when I do my job. The fire commission does not dictate to me the tactics of how I do my job. So why does the police commission dictate the tactics of how the police do their job? If there is a change in tactics or a change in general order, the police commission should have no say in that. Really what should happen is all changes in tactics, all general orders should be coming from the office of the police chief, run by the city attorney, and if it makes sense, if it passes muster, it's a go. The police commission should not be involved. They become too political, they become too obstructionist, and a lot of the reason why the police have not been able to do their job. You know, I've been to police commission hearings. I've seen how the police conduct themselves. Very professional, very professional. The police chief, also very professional, especially with regard to the Dolores Street hill bombing event that happened last October. The police commission has not helped in making San Francisco safer. It's hurt, and I believe the police commission, the role needs to be reformed so that they are taken out of the process. Let these changes happen quicker. There's too much obstruction, there's too much bureaucracy, and it's not doing us any favors. So that's one big change that I would support. I mean, everyone talks about hiring more police, and I'm certainly for that, but I think what's often not talked about is, okay, you hire more police, what are they allowed to do? And that's where my proposal to reform the police commission comes in.
So yeah, I think it's sadly a huge embarrassment that a city 5 times our population has only close to a third of the amount of commissions. I mean, it just shows that, you know, I know everybody in this room doesn't know what all those commissions do. I'm sure people in government don't either, and that's a huge problem. You know, more importantly, I think there's a certain amount of commissions that have way too much power. And, you know, as Stephen brought up, the police commission, one thing I always think about is why should a commission have the power to dictate directive orders and policies to departments that actually stop them from fulfilling their mandate, as it's written in our city charter, which is the most important document to our whole city. So for example, the police commission should not be able to put directive orders and policies that stop the police from enforcing the code of law, which that's in essentially our San Franciscan Constitution. And we can change that, but we have to do it as a ballot box. So that's something we want to do. It's up to us. It's not up to some unelected commission down at City Hall. So, when I look at the massive numbers of commissions, of course, I'm down, I'm for cutting them down and cutting out inefficient ones. And then the ones that have too much power, we certainly need to reform them and make sure they have less and can't affect, things that are downstream from our most important document to our city's legal code.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Melgar has said she supports disbanding the SFPD and requiring officers to reapply to a newly constructed, less violent police force. Do you agree or disagree, and what would you do to improve public safety?
Well, first of all, I think that's an absurd comment. And I know who she said that to. I know why she said that. I was at that same debate. That was the Harvey Milk LGBTQ club. And it was a very, very adversarial debate for me, because I'm not a progressive left liberal. I'm a common sense moderate, and that was not that venue. But I said in that, and I remember this very, very clearly in that debate, I said, I still stand by, I think that defunding the police is a wrong move. I don't support that. I support refunding the police, which, if you can remember back in 2020, that was probably quite a very controversial thing to say. But now here we are 4 years later, we've seen the results of that experiment. It's failed everywhere it's been tried. And now it's popular all of a sudden. But I've been saying it all along. My message has been consistent all the way through. Unfortunately, my opponent is not quite the same way with her beliefs. She tends to change the message according to who she's talking to. But I don't. I don't care if it's Harvey Milk, LGBT Club, SFGOP. I don't care who you talk to. It could be the farthest left or the farthest right club. My message has always been the same. And I'll challenge anybody who thinks otherwise. I'm not afraid of a little debate, a little back and forth, a little stepping into the fire, stepping into the octagon, if you will. I rather enjoy it, actually. It's kind of why I like doing this. But unfortunately, not everybody's like that. So, yeah, it's an absurd idea. It's stupid. I don't know what else I can say about that. I don't support it at all. And there's one more thing. Like I said before, it's not enough to just hire more police. Everyone's saying hire more police, hire more police. Great. Totally on board with that. But, okay, now you hire them, what can they do? And that's where my proposal to reform the police commission comes in. And this is not something that I can really do alone. It's going to take everybody coming down to City Hall speaking. And I'll tell you what, like, my experience, ordinary citizens coming down to speak at City Hall, at commission meetings, at board of supervisor meetings, is very impactful. You'd be surprised how much a public commenter, how much difference can make. There's no shortage of, activists, because a lot of them don't really have jobs. They can come down and just speak at City Hall on the drop of a hat. But we all have jobs, we have responsibilities, we have families, we have school kids to drive around and all that. So when we take the time out to go talk at City Hall, it's very impactful, and I think we should all do that.
So I absolutely disagree with disbanding, restructuring, or defunding the police. I'll make that clear. I absolutely disagree with it. I think the problem is we've criminalized being a cop. While I think that decriminalization and de-incarceration had good intentions, it's clear the results. They have not made our streets safer, and they have not reduced instances of crime. And the capstone of that movement was the defund the police movement, and that had horrible consequences for San Francisco. The worst of it being us losing 1/3 of our police staff during the pandemic. So, you know, Terravall Station, Ingleside Station, they used to have 10 cars on the road, 10 patrol cars. Now they have 4 at best and sometimes 1. And, you know, so first and foremost, I think we need to change how we view policing. We need to change how we view the cops. You know, we need to make sure that they're incentivized to do their jobs, and we can recruit new ones so we reach full and adequate staffing. As Steven said, that's not it as well. You know, we need to support the police. So this operational red tape that the police commission puts in for them, I mean, how many risks do these guys have to run, guys and girls have to run through when they go into their job, just inherent into the job? And now they're worried about getting sued, losing their pay for a couple months when they have families, or possibly worse, going to jail. So, you know, it makes sense to me how rough it is to be a cop. I wouldn't want to be a cop if that was my choice. And these people are city servants. You know, it's a very fundamental, basic city service. So we need to support them. And with that, I also would say resources. You know, interdepartmental agency work, especially addressing issues in the Tenderloin, certainly giving them more technology, more efficient technology, both I think doing paperwork and then also on the street with force multipliers, and you know, definitely reforming bad policies like Prop 47. So, you know, I think we need to stop seeing them as you know, oppositional to us. These are majority of these people working in the police department are very, very good people who are doing this to serve our city. So I want to give them support and give them what they need to fulfill their mandate.
All right, we'll move on to the next question. San Francisco voters recently rejected Prop B, a ballot measure that would have established minimum police staffing contingent on a future tax increase. Supervisor Melgar supported the cop tax ballot measure. What is your stance on how the cost of police staffing needs should be met, and how does it differ from the other candidates? Stephen?
Well, you'd think with a $14.6 billion budget, we could afford to adequately staff our police force. It's a core essential service, and the fact that we have, the fact that anybody would think that we have to raise a tax for that, it's supervisors telling on themselves. They're saying, I can't spend $14.6 billion wisely, so I need to ask for more money. You know, it's like if you're a kid, you get allowance, and your parents give you $5 to go, buy some, I don't know, baseball cards, and you blow it on something else. It's like, okay, well, you wasted your money, so I'm not going to give you any more. But yet we have this attitude in government where if they blow their money on silly things, we seem to not think too hard about giving them more money. Well, that needs to stop. So $14.6 billion is adequate money to pay for basic services. The Board of Supervisors needs to live within its means, like we all do, and spend money wisely. But I want to say something else about this issue as well. We've spent so much time defaming and defanging the police that nobody wants to be a police officer here in San Francisco anymore. So in order to attract more police officers to come to San Francisco, we have to pay them more money to override the concerns of working in the city, because it's so politically unfavorable to be a police officer in the city. So we're making it more difficult on ourselves. We're making it more difficult on ourselves to hire police. And that attitude needs to change as well. So, yeah, I think it's just a symptom of poor prioritization of spending. It's not being fiscally responsible. And as supervisor, I'm going to put an end to that. It's like we need to live within our means. So that's my concern right there, and that's what I'm going to do.
As I said before, public policy is probably the most basic, important basic service. So it should always come from our existing funds in the budget. This is, how it affects the city, the collateral damage when we don't give it enough funding and resources. We see now what it does to all different facets of the city. So, I think with staffing level down, since 2019, 30%, and the budget growing $2 billion more since then, it's clear it's not a money issue. This is a political issue, getting the police what they need. And I think Prop B is just a very, very good example of that. You know, and unlike the incumbent, I would never make my constituents pay for a fundamental basic service like public safety. So, as I said before, and as Stephen mentioned, it's not just about staffing as well. We need to fully support the cops on every facet they need to serve their mandate. It's a basic city service, and it's going to go a long way to taking us back to recovery.
2023 was the deadliest year on record for overdose deaths in San Francisco. Supervisor Melgar opposed a proposal to allow deportation of undocumented fentanyl dealers and helped lead a public protest against it. What specifically would you do to address the sale and use of illegal drugs in San Francisco, its consequences, and how does your position differ from the other candidates? Matt?
Great. I mean, before we get into it, we just have to acknowledge over 800 people died last year in our city of fentanyl. 800 human beings. You know, somebody's mother, father, sister, brother, son, and daughter. So it's clear we need to address this issue. It's just simply unacceptable. And I think we have to do, before I go into that, I certainly think it's the result of a number of bad policies and how they can just really create really horrible consequences for our city and for people. So I think we have to address it in two ways. First, by the supply side, which is the dealers, and by the demand side, which is the users. For the dealers, I mean, these are people selling a drug that they know can easily kill the person buying it. And that's somebody who's in the throes of mental crises, trauma, and certainly addiction, a number of issues. So I support whatever we can do to disrupt their business, for sure. And I certainly would work with state agencies and work with the state to heighten penalties within California for fentanyl dealers. And I definitely would work with the feds and federal agencies to kick it up to federal courts. Whatever it takes to create a deterrent for these dealers from a legal standpoint, I support. On the demand side, I think that's where we do have to give some compassion, certainly. But we also have to sort out who deserves compassion and who does not. For those who deserve compassion, they deserve the full weight of our city services, and there should not be no wait. If somebody wants treatment, we have enough money where they should be able to get intake right away and get the resources they need to get better. If they do not want to, well, move on. Go home, go to another city. You can't stay here. If they want to keep using drugs on our street, I think we need to compel them into services or treatment, and I do agree with the rest of them to do that. So what's clear is we just can't have people dying en masse in SROs and on our streets, and we need to have the infrastructure to get these people into treatment, and most importantly, on the streets. Thank you.
So as a firefighter, I've worked at every station in San Francisco, from 1 to 49. And one of the busiest stations I ever worked at was Station 36 in Civic Center. We run about 20 to 25 calls every day, nonstop. And one of the most common calls we would have was homeless overdose, drug overdoses. So I see our poor policy, or how our poor drug policy play out firsthand. I've watched people die in front of me who've overdosed. Now, usually we can Narcan them and bring them back, but that doesn't always work. So, and I've seen people leave this mortal coil in front of my eyes, and their dealer's around the corner. So how does that, what kind of, furthermore, all this is happening right in full view of City Hall Room 200. One of the biggest drug markets is Civic Center Plaza, and it goes on all night, every night, which just kind of tells me how disinterested City Hall really is in solving this problem, because they can see it. I know they can see it. But one of the biggest things I think we can do is end sanctuary protections for drug dealers. It's no secret that a lot of the drug dealers are from Honduras and they're here illegally. I know this because I've seen this, I've asked them, I've talked to them. I speak fluent Spanish, I can talk to them in Spanish, I know what their deal is and I know what they're all about. So that has to end immediately. And I don't think it's racist, I don't think it's discriminatory to do that, to say that, or to think that. People in San Francisco want it. But it gets conflated with now you're penalizing, you're punishing all immigrants. Well, no. Some immigrants, they don't want to be associated with those other ones who are selling drugs. So I think it's disingenuous to say that or think that. The other thing I want to do is really advocate at the state level for a thing called Alexander's Law. Alexander's Law would strengthen penalties against dealers who have been proven to cause directly a death of some person. People from all around the state wanted it. Tom Umberg from Santa Ana, Todd Glory from San Diego, Mayor of San Diego. They wanted it. It got shot down. So I'm ready to re-engage with other like-minded city leaders from other parts of the state to take back up this effort and pass Alexander's Law. The other thing I want to say is we need to instantly connect people to services in the moment of clarity. If they want treatment, if they want connection to services, let's get it to them right away. And the other thing is this harm reduction has got to go. It's got to go. Handing out free needles, handing out free foil, how is that saving anybody's life? It's not. It's a big Ponzi scheme. We're paying for it as taxpayers, and it's costing people lives, their lives. Thank you.
The SFMTA is tasked with operating Muni while also overseeing the redesign of bikeways, roadways, and signage. This includes actions such as removing traffic lanes, parking spaces, and occasionally closing streets with the goal of improving safety. Additionally, SFMTA allocates significant taxpayer funds to the Bicycle Coalition, a nonprofit advocacy group. Critics argue that SFMTA's initiatives are negatively impacting small businesses, livability, and transportation accessibility for individuals who are unable to bike or walk. Concerns have also been raised about the design of bike lanes, with accusations that they may be unsafe, all while progress on Vision Zero remains stagnant. If SFMTA makes things better, is SFMTA making things better or worse? How do you think SFMTA should be managed or reformed, and what are your 3 top transportation priorities?
Break up SFMTA. Several, I think it was 1990. As a kid growing up, SFMTA did not exist. I want to break it back up into its component organizations of Muni and Department of Parking and Traffic, and hand over the enforcement job to a special division of SFPD, possibly. SFMTA is an organization run amok. It's become too bloated, it's become too bureaucratic, it's been not responsive to the needs of San Franciscans. It's like SFMTA has this idea of how we think we should all live and how we should commute, rather than meeting us where we're at and providing the services that we need. It hasn't really helped at all. It's been a disaster. One can go to Valencia Street and see how that bike lane has had a devastating effect on businesses. The Van Ness Bus Rapid Transit Project took years and decimated the Van Ness corridor. I'm all for big projects which make sense. Like, I would support a subway down Gary Boulevard because it makes sense. It would be heavily used, it would be appropriate, and it would actually provide a valuable service which is needed by the citizens of the inner and outer Richmond. I would support an extension of the Central Subway to North Beach, Fisherman's Wharf, and out towards Lombard. That would make sense. But disruptive projects like the Valencia Street bike lane, like shutting down a lot of our streets for slow streets which no one really uses, that does not make sense. I once asked somebody who worked for SFMTA, this is at a Muni drill I went to, what is your organization? What is your table of organization? What is your command structure? And the guy looked at me like I had a banana growing out of my forehead. He said, there's no, it's like, we have like 8 different bosses. We've all seen Office Space, the TPS reports. We use the wrong cover sheet. 8 bosses come and tell you that using the wrong cover sheet. That's what SFMT is like. It needs to be made more efficient. It needs to be separated into its component organizations of Community and Department of Parking and Traffic, and its missions need to be more simplified and clear. Right now, it's become too bloated, too bureaucratic. It's not helping the citizens of San Francisco. It's running interference on them in many cases.
Great. Thank you. I think SFMTA has completely been failing in their mandate to maintain and improve transit across the city. Vision Zero, I believe, has proved to be just a fully ineffective strategy. In 2022, we had 39 traffic-related deaths, which was the highest since the vision was announced. So it's completely ineffective to even achieving their own ends. But when you look at the great imbalances that all their activities have caused across the city, the collateral damage is is much worse than I think they ever would expect it. And for us as District 7 West Side residents, there's a few things that are probably very close to our heart, but one I want to speak about is the El Terabal line and how disruptive that has been for business owners on that corridor. Their business has been disrupted now. I talk to a lot of the business owners and they're worried about the future. You have a small market on that street, you lost your parking, they're gonna go to Safeway where they can park. And the neighborhoods are already congested around there. So it's quite a tough thing for them to do. I prioritize the safety of pedestrians. I do want to improve the ridership and the quality of the ride for muni commuters and safer for bike riders. But whatever we do, it just can't create this massive imbalance where we see so much collateral damage. So first and foremost, I just would like to prioritize pedestrian safety. And I think part of that is reinforcing traffic codes, something that's completely lost in San Francisco for a long time. Next, as I said, I would like to focus on, improving the infrastructure and the ride quality, and that includes safety for muni riders and then bicycle commuters. And finally, I would like to improve transit and traffic conditions in the city overall, reduce less congestion, make drive times and travel times decrease. I mean, that's something that I think everybody could agree on and something that we could all benefit from. Thank you.
Lastly, SF Planning, Mayor Breed, and Supervisor Melgar all support significant upzoning efforts in both the city and the west side. However, San Francisco already boasts the second highest density among U.S. cities, trailing only New York City, which benefits from a much more extensive subway infrastructure. Do you support the currently proposed zoning changes? And if not, what zoning changes or alternative policies can address the real housing needs of current and future San Franciscans?
Me? Okay, great. This is my favorite topic, I'm not gonna lie. But, unfortunately, it's been broken down to just two groups, YIMBYs and NIMBYs. I'm neither. And I think it's really unfortunate that such a nuanced issue has just been reduced to two extreme tribes. So, it's certainly been over-prioritized or over-politicized for decades from the community standpoint. And now we're dealing with this massive imbalance, something that's a theme in San Francisco politics, from the pro-housing people in the city and across the state. And they're putting tremendous pressure on us to make a change. And I think what's clear is we have to make some compromise. But I think what has been put forth is not good for San Francisco. I think the broad swath of upzoning across the west side has created much more opposition on this issue than it should to drive the needle forward. More importantly, when you look at projects like Stonestown, like Park Merced, like Balboa Reservoir, I'm sure they had some opposition, but they do pass, and Stonestown, I think, will pass with majority community support. So I think that shows that the west side can hold its weight, building dense units and lots of units without changing the fabric of our whole neighborhood. So, I think we just should have had a much more nuanced approach. I think it would have been much more effective getting it through, would have moved the needle on the issue so much more. And from there, and I think it should be opportunity-based. Where can we develop dense developments that'll give us lots of units? And go to single-family home and sound housing stocks last. I think it's crazy. As Herb Cain said, all politics is land use in San Francisco. And we're seeing that play out once again, and we're duking it out. And I don't want to see it drown out the other issues. All the other issues, they're all just as important. And you know, what I would promise as being the District 7 supervisor, bringing some leadership and clarity to this issue, really threading the needle, and actually creating progress that's been missing for decades. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree that the issue of housing has become so polarizing that, you know, a lot of people believe you can only fall into two camps. You're either NIMBY or YIMBY. But I don't believe that that's what most people really think. But that's the most vocal contingent on social media, and it seems to be in government as well. I think people want a much more nuanced approach to housing, and I'll tell you, we have some very special neighborhoods here in District 7, Park neighborhoods, St. Francis Woods, Forest Hill, Westwood Park, Westwood Highland, Single Side Terraces, Balboa Terraces. Those are special neighborhoods, and whether or not I will ever able to be afford to live there is almost irrelevant, because I can still enjoy those neighborhoods. I can walk through them, I can enjoy the greenery, I can enjoy the peaceful nature. It's a departure from the usual packed, dense housing in San Francisco. So those are neighborhoods which are a treasure, a resource, and I want to protect those neighborhoods. However, there is adequate space for development in some areas of District 7, spaces which are underutilized, like Balboa Park and Park Merced and Stonestown. So we can develop there intelligently, we can develop there and not have to go ripping up single-family home neighborhoods. I think we can accommodate that. We can also add stories to certain buildings on Ocean Avenue, West Portal Avenue. There's a little bit room to grow and develop there as well. So I think that's possible. I think it's reasonable, and a lot of people are talking about the 50-foot story tower in the sunset. Let me just say, I think that if the YIMBYs push that, they're overplaying their hand. And I'll tell you why I think that. Because in Paris, for example, which a lot of YIMBYs love to lionize for its dense housing, there is one building that they built there. I don't remember what it's called exactly, but it's a big black block. It caused such a visceral reaction against any further building like that they pretty much put a ban on that kind of building in the future. So I'm all for density that makes sense in areas where it makes sense. I'm just all for simplifying the building permitting process. The Chronicle said it takes up to 87 permits to build a single unit of housing, and it's all approved sequentially. We can simplify that. We can deconflict those permits. Reduce the ones that are unnecessary, eliminate the ones that are unnecessary and contradictory, and that could add up to some cost savings. But to have a ham-fisted approach and say upzone everything, I'm not in favor of that.
Thank you both. That ends the pre-submitted question portion of our meeting. Sarah, do we have time for 1 to 2 questions or maybe more? Okay. All right, I'll try to read this quickly. Earlier this week, the Wall Street Journal featured an article describing St. Louis downtown in an irreversible doom loop of delay and business flight. San Francisco was mentioned in the article as on the same path. Why do you think we are at this point, and what will you do as supervisor to address it?
I think San Francisco has always thought of itself as a destination, and it is a destination. And no matter how bad it got with regard to crime and homelessness and the current drug markets, a lot of our leaders took for granted, oh, it's San Francisco, everyone's always going to want to come here. But eventually that reputation is running out. It's not really true anymore. A few years ago, there is a family from Colombia who rented a car and was touring around San Francisco, and their car got broken into right in front of me. And this is the second time on their week-long trip that their car had been broken into. And I felt so helpless. I was like, I apologize. I didn't know what to tell them. You know, I talked to them in Spanish, and their plane was leaving in about 2 hours, and their passports were gone. So I didn't know. I felt so ashamed and so embarrassed. We got to turn that reputation around, because we can no longer rest on the assumption that it's San Francisco. Everyone's going to want to come here because it's been such an attractive destination for so long. We really need to change that perception that it's unsafe. We need to change that perception that it's dirty. We need to change that perception that the crime is out of control. And that's going to take a while to do, but I think we can do it if we take seriously the threat that public safety, or lack of public safety, has for our city. Like I've already said, about 70% of all sales tax revenue comes from Union Square and vicinity. You know, when I was a kid, I would go down to Union Square with my grandparents for Christmas holiday. I don't know if I could do that anymore if it was present times. So we really need to invest heavily in public safety on the front end and do whatever we can to spread the reputation that we're changing our tune, we're taking a different approach, we're taking seriously the tourist experience, the customer experience of anyone who comes to San Francisco. We want to make it as pleasant and of a place as we can be. And that includes making it safe, making it clean. There's an inordinate amount of dumping that's going on our streets. There's an inordinate amount of open-air drug use, of things like that. We have to change that. We have to, like we did, and I know we can do it because APEC came into town a few months ago, and suddenly it got clean. So we're capable of doing it, but unfortunately the will isn't there. But if I get into office, the will be there all the time, every time.
You know, when you go back to San Francisco's history, all the way back to the gold rush, I mean, San Francisco's always had, it's always been a place of mystique and fame, and people have sought to come here. And I think we've greatly benefited from that fame and mystique, but there's also an element that has hurt us, and that's the fact that we've become sort of known for being the breeding ground of things that come into the national conversation. And you know, while that is a nice thing, it's created this quality where people come here just for that. People see San Francisco just as that breeding ground where they can push their ideas up to the national stage. And I think we see a lot of our now government, people inside government and inside politics in that game. They're using San Francisco more for pushing an ideology, pushing a career trajectory to make it up all the way to Washington, and that has not served us at all. You know, I think when we view San Francisco, the way I viewed it as a business owner, as a father, is how do all these things interconnect to the different aspects of San Francisco that exist today? And then more importantly, what's going to happen to my kids' kids, my grandkids? So, you know, I think we need to start thinking generations ahead, not just what's in front of us, what's the new movement, what can get to the national conversation, and start thinking about what's right for San Francisco. Thank you.
This question will help us get to know you. Who are you supporting as a mayor candidate?
So right now, I'm currently looking at Daniel Leary or Mark Farrell. I'm undecided who is first, who's second. I'm still, considering both. I've met Daniel Leary a few times. I've talked to him. I think he's a good person. I think his heart's in the right place. However, I'm not quite sure about his experience and how he's going to be able to, come into the job not having ever worked in government before like that. But I do appreciate the fact that he's an outsider. He's got a fresh perspective, and I think we need more of that. Mark Farrell came out very strong when he started his campaign with strong messaging, and he's experienced. However, he does own some of the responsibility for what's happening here in San Francisco today. So he's not, I don't give him a pass by any means. That's why I say, Mark Farrell or Daniel Leary, either one. I'm not quite sure yet. In third place, I'd put London Breed. She's saying all the right things now. She's trying to do all the right things now, but who owns this mess? She has. Her leadership has traditionally been reactive, not proactive. I think with a little bit more strong-willed leader, a little bit more proactive leader, one that's able to read the tea leaves better, we would not be in this mess, and she did not possess those characteristics. So that's why I say Daniel Lurie first or second, Mark Farrell first or second, Reed third, and I'm pretty much leaving everyone else off my list.
You know, for me, I want the mayor to get in who's going to help me and work with me to forward the issues, to make progress on the issues that my constituency wants to see. My job is not to make determinations and put positions on who I want to support for mayor. It's to be effective in the seat. And if I was going to sit here and turn down one or thrash one and support one or say I support one and not the others, that would actually hurt my ability to be a good supervisor to you guys. So I actually know all the front runners for mayor, and I believe in my ability to work with all of them, even if they're across the aisle from me, massively. I believe in my ability to work with all of them and be just an effective legislator and effective supervisor for you and move the issues that you guys want to see moved. Thank you.
Sarah, do we have time for a few more questions if we just keep it brief? Okay. Okay, do you support the calls to close Ulloa and West Portal to traffic? Matt?
No, I don't. I think that would be much more problematic than what we have now. I do think we need to find some traffic solutions to there. I think the bus issue with the El Taraval line is just really making things horrible. I think the fact that these muni buses have to wait right there to go into the tunnel, that makes that left turn so dangerous. The one thing I would support is doing stop signs there. I think it would be one of the intersections within that whole space that needs a stop sign. The other ones are bad too. I mean, we do need to figure out a solution down the street. But I think closing Ulloa intersection would again result in more collateral damage and more imbalances than it would actually provide a benefit. So I do think we need a solution for that corner. There's absolutely no doubt, but I think closing it is not the one, and we should look at that.
I don't support closing it at all. I think it's that intersection is not known for fatalities. I've never known about one or heard about one ever happening there. People tend to, in my opinion, proceed very cautiously because it is such a complicated intersection. The one thing I would like to say, though, however, is I think SFMTA does bear some responsibility for this because the family that was waiting there at the bus stop was waiting to go to the zoo, which means they were waiting for the El Taraval. Now, the El Taraval has been a bus ever since it was closed for about 5 years now. Had this project been completed sooner and on time, they would have been waiting inside the train station, away from the traffic. So that's just something I want people to consider right there. It's taken way too long, and a lot of SFMTA negligence has led to this fact. I don't think that closing off Ulloa or West Portal would have made a difference. That wasn't really the issue that I saw. I did go down to the intersection. I did go to the memorial. I know people, the firefighters who responded to that incident. It's very, very tragic, and I think they're still affected by it. But I was quite disturbed how some organizations immediately they seized upon the incident to politicize it and use it to promote their agenda of closing off streets to cars, closing off, proposing all these traffic fixes, if you will, that would not have affected anything. It's a tragic accident. I wish, we all wish it never would have happened, but I don't see closing off West Portal, closing off Ulloa as a fix. I think there's things we could have done. Maybe we could have hardened the bus stop better by putting bollards. That could have been a solution. But I think that closing off the intersection is not going to help things. It's actually going to make things worse because now you're affecting the businesses that West Portal depends on, the customer traffic, the parking traffic that they depend on to stay afloat. And I've talked to several of the business owners, El Toreador, Easy Freezy. You know, they're struggling right now for lack of customers, and you know, anything we can do to help them maintain their clientele is a good thing. And I think that includes making concessions for traffic and parking.
Okay, I've got 2 more questions. How would you create adequate housing for working people, seniors, and homeless people in San Francisco?
Yeah, thank you. So when we look at housing solutions, especially affordable housing solutions, I think there is a big section of our population which is missed, and it's the ones that Jamie just mentioned. So I think we certainly should be incentivizing projects to be built that are focused on housing people within these industries and in these jobs. Certainly when you think about how the police and firefighters, Stephen lives here, but many of them don't. And you know, that's a problem for San Francisco. So, you know, especially when you talk about police staffing, a cop lives in Sacramento or Petaluma, it's a lot easier to take a day off, especially when you're dealing with all the issues you do on the job as a San Francisco police officer. So, so I think we need to find housing solutions for teachers, for policemen, for firefighters, for nurses. I mean, and even people in the trades who are working in San Francisco. I think they deserve it as well. What we need to do is just make sure that whatever money we put into affordable housing addresses all the different demographics that have a need in San Francisco. And I think that's not just the lowest one. San Francisco is extremely expensive. We do have an affordability issue. So we have to provide some solutions for those people who are especially very crucial to our city, like the ones I mentioned.
So one thing I think we can do to attract more city workers, teachers, firefighters, police officers, interested parties to live in San Francisco is, you know, especially teachers, we have to pay them more. We do. And it's, from what I've read and understood, SFUSD is one of the lower paying districts in the Bay Area. So I believe that has to change. The other thing I'll say is, as far as housing for homelessness, for homeless individuals, you know, I'm okay, I'm in favor of that, but on the requirement that it be sober housing. And the reason why I say that is this. I've been in SROs, I've been in non-sober living facilities, and if you put somebody with a addiction problem or a mental health issue unsupervised in a house, in a home or a housing unit, oftentimes they destroy it. And that's just a reality of the situation. I don't like to say this, but it's true. And not only does that affect their housing unit, but it affects their neighbors as well. So that's one stipulation I'd like to make, distinction I'd like to draw about that. The other thing I would say is, sometimes it may not be feasible to house every person who's homeless in San Francisco. It's expensive to build here. There's a lot of costs associated with it, and unfortunately there's a lot of grifting and corruption associated with the affordable housing industry. If we can combine with other cities, other municipalities, and get them housing somewhere in an area where it's less expensive, we can get more bang for our buck, we can help more people, we can do more good. So, although it's like idealistic to say that we should be able to house every homeless person here in San Francisco, it's not realistic. But let's do what we can for as many people as we can. So that's how I would approach the problem.
Thank you. Last question. Regarding housing, Park Merced redevelopment was proposed in 2011, over a decade ago. Now Melgar staff has said it is over 20% vacant. It is not safe. What would you do about it?
Well, I've been to a few Park Merced meetings and quite aware of the situation, and it is a problem. I did not know that for a long time. It's got a 20 to 25% vacancy. There are squatters. There are people living there who are squatting in homes, who are running illegal chop shops, who have dogs that are attacking people, threatening people. And I've met with some of those neighbors, and you know, I have a personal interest in this as well because my cousin lives there with her baby. So I really want to lean into Park Merced management. What is going on there? How can we help you address this squatter problem? I know it's very difficult in California to solve, but there are solutions out there. There's an industry called squatter evictors. They're people who actually can hire to squat on the squatter. And it's kind of you flip the tables on them. And it's a way to kind of like get the housing back to the rightful owner, to the rightful landlord. And at the very least, you know, everyone who pays rent deserves housing which is in a good condition. So definitely I'm going to take a closer look at this, hold the Park Merced Housing Corporation accountable, but at the same time, what can we do to help you evict these squatters? What can we do to help you deal with the crime situation, the RV situation around that as well? Like there's tons of RVs on Winston. We've all seen the RVs on Winston. We've all seen the RVs on Lake Merced, on Hergera Drive, Vidal, all those streets inside. What can we do to help you help the residents? And that's what I'll do. Like I said, I've got a personal stake in this because my cousin lives there with her baby.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta ask why Park Merced is vacant. And I actually heard the other day it's up to 35%. And, you know, Maximus Realty, I believe, was the last company that owned it. You know, they do, I think, $500 million in revenue a year. So it just doesn't make sense that they would, you know, let the place deteriorate. There has to be a reason. And I think that's because they're trying to make it more financially feasible to develop that building. If it's fully occupied and they want to develop, well, there's a financial aspect to that. And the truth is why isn't this stuff moving? It's in the pipeline. Why isn't it moving? It's not because of San Francisco, it's because it doesn't pencil out. Nothing's penciling out right now. You know, so I think we need to figure out as a city, and especially when we're declining revenues, it's gonna be very, very tricky. But we gotta incentivize people in a down market. We gotta stimulate them if we want them to build it this time. So I would guess that Park Merced, the owners, are letting it fall apart because it's financially right for them. And is that good? No. Would I lean on them to do better? Absolutely. Would I maybe try to find a better partner to own and do the development? Yes. What's certainly true is that, you know, for I think new projects, we got to find a way to reduce the soft costs. I mean, 10% of soft costs going into a project, that completely blows it out, blows out the pro forma on it. So if we were to reduce the soft costs in the planning process, save them, let's say 5%, things start to pencil out. You'll see movement in the housing market. So, you know, again, people like to talk and say, you know, it's our planning's fault and you know, San Francisco, the community, you know, neighborhood organizations and all these people. But I think, and there might be some truth to that, I gotta admit, but I think we have to look at the bigger macro environment. And for a capital allocator, somebody who's investing into real estate right now, it just simply doesn't pencil out. So the city should stop spending money on such wasteful things. If we care about housing, reduce our wasteful spend on things so we can incentivize developers to build and move the needle on the housing crisis.
Thank you. Okay, Matt and Stephen, before we get to closing statements, let's do a quick lightning round. We're looking for one word, yes or no answers, nothing more than a sentence. You ready? Okay. How long have you lived in San Francisco and how long in D7?
1983 to 1998, 2014 to present.
I've been back since after college 10 years ago, and we've been in our home and in our neighborhood about that time, about 10 years.
Is there a role for public conservatorship for people struggling with mental illness or drugs?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you believe that supervisors should weigh in on international policies?
No.
Nope.
Lastly, lastly, what's your favorite D7 guilty pleasure?
Bull's Head Restaurant. I love the, sometimes I'll splurge, I'll get like I think it's either a half pound or a 1 pound. I could eat a pound. Bison burger, blue cheese, bacon, onion rings, avocado, to make it healthy. They always offer me a salad. I say no, give me the fries.
I actually always go for the salad bar. I love it. So, I go across the street to Unwind. You know, the former owners of Orexi started that. It's a wine spot, but they got some of the best food on the block. Most of it's from Orexi again. So if you like that restaurant, go back and see them for sure.
Okay, thank you for being such good sports. Okay, now it's time for your closing remarks. Please tell us how you distinguish yourself from the other candidates and why you think our vote and trust should be placed in you.
Great. You know, I think I already kind of spoke a lot about it, but I'll simply go back to it. You know, I'm viewing this whole thing from the standpoint of a fourth generation San Franciscan, a father, and a small business owner. And all of my positions, all of my philosophies are going to flow from that viewpoint. And I think it's a very interconnected viewpoint. It's one that sees the different facets of the city, how it could cause damage across the city. And furthermore, I think being a small business owner, as I said before, it's taught me a lot about accountability. Until the campaign, I used to wake up at 2:30 in the morning to go to work for our business during the week. And nobody else was going to show up if I didn't wake up. It was hard, but I did it for almost 8 years. And I promise to have that same dedication to all of you. I think I'll be an upfront leader, and that's something District 7 has lacked for a very long time. I don't want to be in City Hall. I don't want to be in City Hall. I want to be in front of you. I want to address the issues that are close to you, and I want to serve you. I don't want to go to Washington or Sacramento. I don't want to be anything except a supervisor. For me, that's the greatest political seat I could have in the world. It serves the best place that I think exists in the whole world, and that's the west side of San Francisco. So thank you.
I really honestly believe that what I'm going to bring to the table is something that's quite unique. I've been a firefighter, I've been a Marine Corps veteran, I've served in Iraq and Afghanistan and the country of Georgia. I've been involved in the community for a very long time. I've gotten to know all the neighborhoods. I've worked with neighbors to solve problems at the micro level. I've been the Sunnyside Neighbor Association president. I was the Twin Peaks Central Council president, Veteran Affairs Commissioner. But I also bring a certain unique flavor, I think, to politics, and that's honesty and integrity. I don't consider myself a politician. Like I said, I don't think like a politician. I don't speak like a politician. I don't act like a politician because I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant, and I've been one my entire life, pretty much. This job. I love my job as a firefighter, but I just can't sit by and do nothing while I'm watching the city deteriorate. So I have to get involved. It's coming from a place of truly wanting to make the city a better place. This is not a political arrangement for me. I don't need to do this, but I feel like I have to do this and I want to do this because, I've already got a great career, but what's happening here in San Francisco is unacceptable, and somebody's got to do something about it, and I'm hoping to be the one that can finally bring some common sense, some truth, some integrity, some real world experience, because, all these policies that happen, that are enacted in City Hall, I see the result of that every day I go to work. I see how it fails or how it doesn't work. The drug crisis, I've dealt with people who have overdosed. I've dealt with people who have, our public safety issues. I've dealt with many things. I see a lot of things, I see a side of San Francisco that a lot of politicians don't see, and even don't want to see, refuse to see, refuse to acknowledge. So my tenure as a politician, if elected supervisor, will be informed by real world experience, by common sense, by integrity, by honesty, and that's really what's different between me and other politicians. I came into this race making one promise to myself, to tell like it is and not hold back. And people are hungry for someone to acknowledge their feelings, to hear the truth, to hear it like it is. So I believe I'm that person, and I would love nothing more than the privilege of representing you all at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you for participating this evening. I hope everyone here has a better sense of who you are as a candidate and what you hope to achieve in office. Each of the candidates have left materials should you be interested in further engagement, hosting house parties, or participating in their campaigns. Over the next few months, Sensible D7 and other neighborhood groups will be hosting events and Zoom meetings to extend tonight's discussion. These gatherings aim to assist you in determining the best representation for both you and our district City Hall. If you are interested in learning about these events, please make sure you're on our mailing list by signing up on the registration sheet at the front door. If you're already on our mailing list, you will be getting updates. Please donate using the QR code and invite a friend. We are 100% donor funded. That concludes our D7 Supervisor Candidate Forum. Thank you all for coming and for participating in the process of selecting this important position. If you could please help pick up any trash that might have been left behind, that'd be very helpful.